May we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. And we'll just call out the member agencies today for Bolinas Fire District, for the City of Larkspur,
Here.
Kentfield Fire District,
Here.
Novato Fire District,
Here.
Stinson Beach Fire, Town of Ross,
Present.
City of Mill Valley, County of Marin Fire,
Here.
Marin Wood.
Sure.
And was that Marin Wood online there?
Yeah, here.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Just wanted to capture you for the record. Sleepy Hollow Fire,
Here.
Town of Corte Madera,
Present.
Town of San Anselmo, City of San Rafael,
Here.
Inverness Fire,
Jim Fox here.
Muir Beach,
Here.
Southern Marin,
Here.
and Town of Fairfax.
Here.
And for our non-voting members at large, we have Marin County Parks,
Jim Chega here from Marin County Parks.
California State Parks,
Here.
PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, and we have the National Park Service. Okay. UC Cooperative Extension. UC Cooperative Extension is present in the room, let the record state. Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Fire Safe Marin. And we do have Fire Safe Marin virtually. Ecologically Sound Practices. And I believe that's OFA. We do have ecologically sound practices virtually joining us momentarily, and Point Reyes National Seashore Association. Okay, that concludes the roll, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 3. Are there any adjustments to the agenda that was posted? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go ahead to item number 4, which is open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the advisory technical committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of this committee. Please be advised that pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 3 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Do we have anyone from the public wishing to speak?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item, the open time for public expression, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And it does not appear that there are any comments.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment. Moving on to item number 5, the Planning and Program Managers Report. Ann?
Great. Thank you. And Martina is going to be sharing her screen for me. Thank you so much. Thank you. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Great. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to another season of developing our annual work plans. Excited to see you all here in person and virtually. Thanks for those attending virtually if you had some constraints there. I thought I'd take just a quick moment and review some of the things that we've been up to. We haven't seen each other in a few months, so let's take a moment and talk about what we've been doing. I'm going to organize just a few highlights by goal. And as a reminder, MWPA's board developed 5 goals related to wildfire resilience and risk reduction, including vegetation management, detection, alerts and evacuation, grants for residents, public education and outreach, and defensible space and home hardening. Next slide. So we've been very busy under Goal 1. Vegetation management has been underway, and we've got well over 30, it depends on how you count them, but 31 or so projects that have been approved by the board and have gone through CEQA compliance. And that's including vegetation management type projects and evacuation route projects. If you count LRAD and some of the others, then your number goes up. In Novato, we've seen at least 6.5 miles of the Greater Novato Shaded Fuel Break implemented so far. We've also seen somewhere around 20 miles of shaded fuel breaks implemented and around 30 acres of grazing done. In Central Marin, we've seen at least 20 miles of the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break implemented. In San Rafael, we've seen somewhere around 10 miles of shaded fuel breaks implemented, another 10 miles or so of fire road maintenance, and another 170, 180, maybe around 178 if you want to get precise, acres of goat grazing implemented. In Southern Marin, there's also a lot going on. Many miles of shaded fuel breaks implemented, some around 17 or so miles. And in the West, we've done a lot of planning around roadside evacuation route work and shaded fuel breaks. And no shaded fuel breaks implemented as a core project at this point, although Stinson Beach has implemented a shaded fuel break adjacent to its community as a local project on federal land. We have a big planning process underway in West Marin for CEQA compliance and compliance under the Coastal Act. So stay tuned for that. Next slide. So related to vegetation management, we've been doing a lot of work along roadways in Marin County, including in Novato, at least 11 or so miles of roadside veg management completed. Central Marin, at least 12 miles. San Rafael, some around 13 or so miles. Southern Marin, around 5 to 6 miles, and West Marin, around 11 miles. And that's a big deal in West Marin. Being able to do anything in the coastal zone is a big deal. So that's through our coastal development permit through the county. Next slide. Oh, actually, if you go back one slide, I'll just note, we've also have a big rollout underway that many of you are already aware of, and we're going to hear from Charlotte and Ted shortly on this subject, but our evacuation ingress egress risk assessment tool has been launched, both a public version and an agency version, and you'll hear more about that in a little later today. Next slide. So you'll notice that a lot of my numbers in the previous slides were around at least, they were estimates. And so one of the things that we're working on, we funded in the last work plan is a GIS program. So we're working, meeting regularly with an organization called Green Info Network, and they are working actively to help us set up a GIS program for the MWPA and for our projects. And so this is a really big deal. We are working diligently to set up, get hardware, software, have a GIS workstation here on site. We're training employees to do GIS, and we are setting up data management systems, protocols, et cetera, to help work with all of you on tracking projects and project implementation. We're working with various partners and organizations. We've been talking to OneTam about data collection tools and how best to support projects in the field. So we'll do a lot better job of tracking our project implementation in the future. And we're very excited about that because that'll help us measure our metrics, how we've been doing in terms of reducing wildfire risk. We'll be presenting information on project implementation, location and activities, before and after photos in dashboards and public facing maps on our web pages, et cetera. So a lot more coming soon, and we're very excited about that. Additionally, we are working on a request for qualifications process for vegetation management services. Many of you have heard about this previously. We actually went out and requested qualifications packages from various contractors. We received several great ones, and we're going through them now. So stay tuned. We'll have more information on that in the near future. Next slide. So 2 more goals that are very related to each other: grants for residents and also defensible space and home hardening. Again, we do around 30,000 or so inspections annually. This last year was no exception. We've also distributed another 700,000 or so in grants to residents for home hardening and defensible space, similar number as the year before. We're finding that every dollar distributed through Measure C tends to inspire another $6.50 of home hardening and defensible space work on properties. So we're seeing a good return for our investment. With that said, there are always changes that we could make to make the program more efficient and effective. So many of you have already had some conversations with our grants program specialist, Josh Hampshire, and also Charlotte Jourdain here on different ways to make this project and program more effective. So stay tuned. We'll talk more about this at the ATC level in a future agenda. And then the chipper program has also been very active. We've seen well over 4,000 pickups this last year, and that's around a 30 to 35% increase over the year before. So really successful and busy program. Next slide. Public education is another big topic. I won't go into great detail. There's a really good report from Fire Safe Marin attached to our November MWPA board agenda. And so if you want to dig into what Fire Safe Marin has been up to, that is a great resource. It's a gorgeous report, has a lot of great detail. We've also been hosting a lot of public field trips. We really love getting people out to our project sites. If you have any ideas for where you'd like to bring people, please let me know. They tend to be really popular and well attended, and it's a great way to get questions answered. We encourage people who are skeptical about projects to come out, ask tough questions, take a look at what we're doing on the ground, and learn a little bit from each other. That's okay. We've also been working a lot in the Spanish translation arena, and our very own Grizzly Corps fellow, Andrea Salinas, has been helping a lot in that arena. So a big thank you to her. We also have a wildfire risk perception survey that's been underway for a while. It was part of this current work plan. And we'll be hearing more about the results of that survey in coming agendas in the next couple of months here. Next slide. Great. And then I want to end with some staffing updates. So as you know, we really wanted to continue staffing up. We've got our new grant specialist, Josh Hampshire, on board. We have our Grizzly Corps fellow, Andrea Salinas. This is her second year as a Grizzly Corps fellow. She's got a lot of great skills. And we now have 3 vegetation management specialists. So you know Stephen Peters already. He's also running the chipper program. And then we also have Ted Briggs and Jacob Dadman. Jacob is sick today, so he's not here. So I'll ask him to introduce himself another time. But we have Ted Briggs here, and I'm wondering if he could introduce himself just briefly.
Good morning. So Josh and I were hired at the beginning of October, so we're just 2 months into this. So bear with us as we get our feet on the ground. We get to know names and faces. A little bit about me and what brought me here. So I started as a volunteer firefighter many years ago, and then ended up in both paid and reserve positions for a total of about 5 years. I have a background also in environmental compliance, including a related degree. And I also recently started serving in the California Military Department as a wildland firefighter. So I have a passion for this thing. That's why I'm here.
Great. Thank you. So now we have, several staff members who can help on projects. In fact, while Novato Fire staff are in Monterey, we have a couple of folks out working crews for the Greater Novato Shaded Fuel Break this week. And so I just want you to keep that in mind, that we now have staff who can help support projects in the field and do more of the planning effort. And I have people to delegate to, which is very exciting. So with that, I'll end it for the moment and take any questions if you have them.
Any questions for him? Any questions from members in our virtual audience? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. I just want to say thank you for reporting that out, Ann. There's a lot of good work being done out there by everyone, and to see all the accumulated numbers, it's very impressive. I know most of us are impressed with what happens locally within our own sphere of influence, but seeing it all accumulated definitely, I think we're changing the needle. Yeah, wildfire resiliency. So thank you.
Belle has her hand up in the audience.
We do have a raised hand. I see that Belle Cole
Okay,
from
Belle,
BSB.
do you have a question or comment?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, those were really exciting and impressive numbers that you provided. I just wondered if you could just say a little bit more about the metric side of things that you discussed in the CTS program. And is this going to be a big uphill effort? Do you need more resources for it? How is that? How do you see that working?
Bill, I'm sorry, did you say CTS effort?
I took it from your slide. Yeah. I'm sorry. You talked about metrics, and it was a program of yours that you were talking about,
Go back.
and I was and I wondered how that was going to be. And you said you were hoping that you had other things, you had funding, you had a way of getting additional information, and I just wondered if what it would take for you to expand on obtain and getting and producing more metrics.
Yeah, I think it would be great to dive into metrics at one of our upcoming meetings. Charlotte Jourdain has been leading the effort to think through exactly what metrics and objectives we are tackling as MWPA. And so she's been leading a group to discuss those topics in particular. In terms of the GIS program and the development of the GIS program for the near future, before we can really accurately measure not only where we're treating vegetation, but what types of activities and how much we're moving the needle, we need, the basic infrastructure of a GIS program. And that's what we're tackling right now, is just getting the bones together so that we can accurately measure consistently across member agencies and across projects, using kind of common language, common data, common practices for, naming conventions, things like that in terms of the technical kind of nuts and bolts of the program. We're also working with, OneTAM and other folks who've been tackling this topic in terms of what data to collect in the field as you're implementing projects, what types of treatments are occurring where, so that we can kind of speak a common language when we're reporting to CAL FIRE, say through CalMapper, and other arenas, and kind of compare across different jurisdictions what types of activities are taking place. And then, as you and I have spoken about previously, we do want to get more into the monitoring arena, so that we're monitoring not only for, in the immediate for retreatment and regrowth of vegetation within those polygons, but then also thinking kind of outside the box in terms of long-term ecological monitoring that goes beyond maybe what Measure C was meant for, but could use an outside funding source, et cetera. So we're exploring those options as well, especially with our consultants and biologists, to think through what that might look like, what type of structure that might be, what kind of funding that might take.
That's great. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions or comments, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the committee and move on to item number 7. Actually, item number 6, the consent calendar. This is an opportunity for the public to comment or consent on agenda items that will occur prior to the committee's discussion of the consent agenda. The committee may approve the entire consent agenda with one action. In the alternative, items on the consent agenda may be removed by any committee or staff member for a separate discussion. Is there anything on the consent calendar that anyone would like to pull for discussion? Seeing none, I would like to entertain a motion for consent item A, which is the minutes of our December 6th meeting.
So moved.
We've got a first. Can we get a second?
Seconded.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Before we take the roll call, Chair and Committee, I just want to inform the meeting that Quinn Gardner is attending this meeting remotely due to a qualifying reason under Brown Act as modified by AB 2449. It looks like an infectious illness posed an unexpected barrier to Quinn's attending in person. Quinn, can you let us know if there is anyone in the room with you over the age of 18?
There is no one in the room with me.
Thank you so much. And so just to move forward with the meeting, that was a motion by Dr. Taylor, second by Chief Lando to approve the consent calendar as presented. And there were no adjustments. So we'll go ahead and go by roll. We do have to call a complete roll due to the remote attendance of one of our
Okay.
members.
Yes, absolutely.
Starting with the city of Larkspur,
Here.
with Kenfield,
Here.
Novato.
Here.
And are these
I mean,
votes
yes.
yes to approve the consent calendar?
Yes.
For the town of Ross,
Yes.
for the county of Marin Fire,
Yes.
Marin Wood Community Services District,
Yes.
Sleepy Hollow Fire,
Yes.
the town of Corte Madera,
Yes.
city of San Rafael,
Yes.
Inverness,
Yes.
Muir Beach,
Yes.
Southern Marin Fire,
Yes.
town of Fairfax.
Yes.
And I do not believe that we have had any additional members join us since roll. So that is a unanimous vote of all in attendance.
Thank you, Martina. And just a step back for a matter of business, I believe we have to take a motion in a second for approval of Quinn to participate remotely and take a vote on that, or is it just unanimous that because she's here?
That would be just a vote to allow her to attend remotely, but I don't believe it needs to be
Do we need a roll call for that?
no, but do we have unanimous consent of those here?
All those in favor for Quinn attending remotely, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Saying none.
Thanks, everybody.
And thank you for being remote.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Consent calendar is approved. Moving on to item number 7, discussion items. Item number A is development of the fiscal year 2025 work plan and coordination with land management agencies. Do we have a report?
Yes, we do. And Martina's going to help me by sharing her screen. It's the same presentation, just the next slide.
This one? Oh, there we go.
Can you go back a little bit? There you go. No problem at all. All right, great. So we're going to talk a little bit about our own work plan as the ATC for the next few months. It's hard to believe that it's already time to start talking about 24-25. That sounds so far in the future, since we are still working so much on implementing our current work plan. Next slide. Oh, that's interesting. The formatting got changed a little bit, moving from one device to another. So just as an overview, I know we have at least one new member of the ATC this year. The ATC includes 17 members. These are member agency staff who are voting members. And then we also have non-voting members, members at large. And that includes UC Cooperative Extension, who's here with us today, and others. Marin County Parks, Marin Water, State Parks, National Park Service, both GGNRA and Point Reyes National Seashore, our Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership, UC Cooperative Extension, who I mentioned, Fire Safe Marin, and members of PG&E's staff. We have a voting structure that addresses both majority of votes, number of votes in a meeting, and also population represented by each of those votes. So those votes are weighted. ATC members provide technical expertise. I mean, you all are experts here and your input is really valuable. Your role is to help shape what our next work plan should look like, what kind of proposals we should be looking at, what projects should continue from one year to the next in terms of an additional budget item, what new projects might be a good idea, both within your jurisdiction and across jurisdictional boundaries. And you can help brainstorm difficult topics such as, what the next grant program should look like. Ad hoc subcommittees are a great way to do that. And that's a tool we've used previously. We plan to do that again this year. And then physically submitting proposals into the work plan portal, which is online. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. For reference, we do have bylaws for the advisory technical committee, and they're online on the committee webpage for the MWPA. I will note that last year, the operations committee made some changes to their bylaws because they were a little out of date and kind of assumed a certain frequency of meetings, et cetera, that doesn't necessarily play out in reality. That is something to consider for the ATC as well. Just looking at the bylaws, some of the language seems a little bit out of date. So that's something to explore as a group. Next slide. So this is an overview of the process that it's basically identical to what we did last year. We spent some time figuring out our process and our timeline, and I think it worked pretty well last year. So we're going to take a similar approach this year. Generally speaking, November and December, we're kicking things off. We're checking for any bugs in the web portal online to see if there are things that need to be fixed. We're working with consultants to fix a few bugs that we found this time around right now. We should be opening up the web portal in January for use to start submitting proposals. We start the ATC and operations committees meeting each December. In January, we will need to elect a chair and vice chair for the ATC and the operations committee as well, and think through, any modifications to overall approach and timeline, et cetera. So keep in mind that although this isn't a formal item on the agenda today, to think through, who the next chair and vice chair will be of the ATC, you might want to connect with Ruben and Lynn between now and January if you're interested in taking part as chair or vice chair of the ATC. They have done a fantastic job so far, and maybe we want to, keep them there forever, but maybe they don't have time to. So think through if you have some availability and you might be able to take on that role and give Lynn and Ruben a little time back. So January is an important meeting, an important month to attend for the ATC. It's also a good time to make sure you have been communicating with land management agencies about potential projects on their lands. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But generally speaking, if you want to see something in next fiscal year on public lands, you'll want to make sure you've communicated by mid-January. In February and March, that's a really go time in terms of submitting proposals. By March 1st, we want to have our JPA-wide proposals submitted so that we can start calculating what the remainder of the core budget is going to be for everybody else. We want to make sure to have those budget numbers available earlier rather than later. We're also going to have a better understanding of what our projected Measure C revenue is going to be. We'll be submitting drafts of proposals by mid-March, and that's member agency proposals. And then by March 31st, it would be great to have final proposals into the portal so that we can really dive into fine tuning, thinking through budget, et cetera. And that's where the operations committee really comes online. It's really working on that budget. Again, we have ad hoc subcommittees that usually meet during this entire process to really think through any specific topics that need some additional conversations and coordination. In April, in March and April, we usually have, you'll remember, a lot of presentations on JPA-wide proposals and then individual project proposals so that we're all aware and we're making public what we're planning to do. In the web portal, we'll be flipping the switch from internal to public so that people in the who visit our website can see what the draft proposals are looking like. So that's a key component of the process as well, making sure we're transparent. We're going to want to finish those conversations about priorities and proposals, et cetera, in April so that May 3rd, the Operations Committee can discuss the work plan and make some decisions so that they can recommend it to the board. And I may have the dates, May 3rd and May 18th, incorrect on here. I'd have to double check that. But early May is when Operations Committee will take action. And then mid-May is when the board will take action. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, and then I also invited, and I think this is kind of an annual tradition at this point, National Park Service, state parks, Marin Water, and Marin County Parks to communicate with us, how best to work with them in terms of this process and what their internal timelines are. Next slide. Okay, next one. Greg Jones was going to join us today. Up until just a couple minutes before this meeting started, he was hoping he was going to be able to attend. The most important date on this slide, I can't go through and give you all the acronyms in this slide, but the most important date is really January 15th, and that's when they really want to know what, if any, projects you'd like to pursue on federal lands. That includes continuing implementation of existing projects. So for example, in Southern Marin, we're talking with national parks already about continued implementation in the Tam Homestead Valley area because they have limited staffing and budget to help support projects in the field. You want to get your ideas in the queue early so that they can start budgeting and planning and doing their internal process so they can cover National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA compliance, et cetera. Next slide. So we also hopefully have Cindy Schaefer with California State Parks who can address this slide. Cindy, are you there?
Yes, yeah, I'm here. And actually the slide from National Park Service is a great guideline for coordinating with California State Parks as well. So that's this first bullet, but the collaboration timing really is similar to other land management agencies, specifically National Park Service. We do have, and that is the sooner the better, but making sure that we're well aware by January 15th of any proposals on state park land. To work along the edges of our state parks, we do have a permit process, a boundary vegetation modification permit process, and we've already utilized that with some member agencies around China Camp State Park with San Rafael Fire. That's worked really well, and we've also utilized that permit process at Mount Tam State Park and Tamales Bay State Park, really where we have the most communities adjacent to our parks. And so I think submitting by January 15th really gives us the time to talk through any constraints, agree on scopes, policy consistency, and yeah, it's worked well so far. I think that's all I would say about that.
Thanks, Cindy. And so next, I've got a slide, if you don't mind advancing the slides to Martina. I'm wondering if Sean Horn can provide a little bit of information about how to coordinate with Marin Water.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Sean Horn, Marin Water. So this map on the screen here shows work that's planned out on the Water District's land through 2026. An area of focus that we've got a lot of work that folks could be supporting is in the area of pile burning. We've been doing a lot of forestry restoration work and generated a lot of piles and have a lot of that material to burn off through this winter season. We've also got 4 prescribed burn plans that have been developed for the mountain. And we had a successful project that County Fire led the implementation on this last year. So looking to move those forwards and progress those over the coming years as well. In terms of veg work, we have been collaborating with Marin County Fire on the Greater Ross Valley Fuel Break area. And there's some good work that was done last year. And in addition to what the district has planned, we're open to conversations. Just, connect with myself or Carl Sanders, our natural resource manager, and we're happy to explore those.
Great. Thanks so much, Sean. Let's see. Next up, we have Marin County Parks. And Martina, do you mind advancing 2 slides? There you go. Jim Cheka, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Great.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, this is a bit redundant because I think everyone has said largely that we share very similar timelines, but it's comforting to see everyone that's in attendance on Zoom and everyone in the room, that we have a lot of great partners already there in terms of ongoing relationships with Marin County Parks and all of your fire jurisdictions. So I think this is well understood, but it really aligns with the timeline that Ann already described. So we really want to be in conversation with you all by the 15th of January so we can understand your concept plans. That'll help us kind of understand how that request may fit into the projects that we're developing for 2024 as well. And so if we can get that early heads up and start the conversation, that's what we're asking for. And then after that, it really just becomes a succession of sort of checkpoints where we want to make sure that we're making progress. Between January and March, just like the ATC is developing its project proposals and has a project proposal deadline of the 31st. That's what we do too. We want to make sure that we kind of understand in more detail what's being requested. So maybe not just like, hey, Jim, we want to do something at Ring Mountain, but this is what we're thinking exactly. So here are some maps, here is a prescription and a scope of work. So, that final draft phase by the end of March 31st is what we're hoping for. And then everything after that really just gets down to be more and more granular. Who are the contractors we're using? What's our mobilization look like? Really getting into project specifics so that when July 1st comes, which is the beginning of the fiscal year, that we really have a plan in place and we kind of understand at all levels of the project what the plan is. I think that's all I have, Ann.
Great. Thanks, Jim. All right. Next slide. And just as an FYI, I went back into the slides here and modified those 2 items in that table. So May 2nd is the last ops meeting and May 16th is the board meeting at which the board would approve the work plan. So the web portal, as many of you already know, is the tool where we are submitting digitally project proposals. If you have trouble, you should be able to log in. If not, let us know. We can make sure you have login information. We'll have several staff members to support you. And if you have technical difficulties with the web portal, you can also just, if we can't work it out, we can always have you email us the information. We can enter it into the portal for you. Next slide.
And can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, please.
So in the portal last year, there was some difficulty entering stuff in, and then there were some changes made. I'm assuming that the issues from last year have been fixed, and there's been some improvements to the portal. And I'm just wondering if agencies are going to get a training or some sort of training or something on the new portal access.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had our veg management specialist go in and try to trip it up and find any bugs and submit odd combinations of projects in different zones and different types of projects to try to find any bugs and then communicate any issues to the contractors to fix them. So those edits have been made. So we think it's actually working fine at this point. And so if there are issues, we can address those as they come up. Any trainings, happy to do that. So it might make sense to do that, especially since we have at least one new member of the ATC. So stay tuned. We can do that either in an ATC meeting, maybe in January, since we're going to open up the portal in January, or we can do individual kind of one-on-one trainings as well for those who would like it. Does that address your question? Okay.
Yeah, the only other problem that we were experiencing was if you had multiple agencies that were working on the same project, there had to be a lead agency, and then it was hard to figure out where the other agencies would input their information. So I think we can address that at the training though.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, any other challenges that you guys have, do let us know. We can try to work it out. Within the web portal, because we're Brown Act compliant, we cannot make proposals visible to more than a quorum of the ATC, which is definitely a source of frustration. But as soon as we make them public, then everybody can see them. So making proposals public as early as possible is a great way to help with transparency internally as well as externally. So in terms of the web portal, you should be able to access it from our website on the upper left where it says JPA portal. If you have any trouble getting your login or anything, contact myself or Josh Hampshire and we can walk you through it. We also have other veg management specialists who have been trained and who are getting more and more familiar with it. And so we can help you. So in terms of what projects should be entered, basically anything you would like to have included in next year's budget. If you already have budget for it and you're just going to continue implementing it without asking for additional Measure C funding, then it doesn't necessarily need to be entered into the portal. But if it's core, local, or DSpace proposal that needs additional funding, please do enter it into the proposal, into the portal so that we can include that in next year's budget, because this is really setting the stage for budget preparation. Let's see, next slide. Okay, last slide here. Just in terms of next steps, kind of our own to-do list, definitely time to think through brainstorming new and continued projects for inclusion in next year's budget. Please do keep in mind that, last year we talked about core budget and really allocating 80% of the core budget towards projects and then thinking through what to do with that additional 20%. So as you know, and we talked about this last year as well, 80% of revenue generated in any particular zone needs to be spent within that zone, averaged over 5 years. So on the flip side, that does give you some flexibility to think through any projects, programs, particular priorities for the ATC operations committees in different regions of Marin County. It gives you some flexibility. So last year we ended up setting aside the 20% temporarily, and then just taking a piece of that and putting it towards efforts in West Marin, because West Marin planning and implementation is so expensive. So, and then the remaining 20% was reallocated back to the projects and programs. It was a little bumpy to get all those numbers worked out, but that's how we ended up doing it. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking through budget and planning this year as well. In January, maybe we'll agendize a review of the work plan portal and how to use it. That's when we'll really dive in earnest in proposing projects into the work plan portal. And then think through, your homework right now is to think through chair and vice chair positions for the ATC, and think about whether or not you'd like to take one of those roles. So that's it for these slides. Happy to take any questions at this point.
Do we have any questions from the group for Ann?
Or questions for Ruben and Lynn about
yes, any questions for us
chair and vice chair?
on how amazing it is to sit at the chair and vice chair? Just the amount of reward that you get at the end of every year. With that, I believe Quinn's got her hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I think the overview from the other land managers was really helpful in getting those timelines. So it's a great idea and want to encourage that in the future. I might ask that we include Caltrans in that in the future. That's been a challenge for us in the past, and there's a lot of land along roadways and stuff that we're trying to collaborate them on. So thanks to all of our partners for providing that info, and look forward to continuing to work with you. And then my second question / comment, and I think you kind of alluded to maybe talking about this next meeting, Anne, but I just think last year we all kind of struggled with kind of figuring out our budget, based on projects, based on the timeline with that 80-20 and what was going to be like quote unquote competitive versus what we were just kind of owning as our zones. So I think the sooner we can figure that out, the better, just so we all know what we're working with. Because in some cases it's just a scale thing where we scale back a project, and in other cases it's eliminating entire projects or needing to push something off if we don't have the funds we think we're going to get, if we're not going to get the full if we're gonna get closer to the 80 than the 95 per se. So I think the sooner we hash that out, the better. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And happy to reach out to Caltrans to think through how to coordinate. It can be a little challenging. We did some coordination with Caltrans in Muir Beach for the work along Highway 1, which was really helpful. We've also been coordinating, by the way, with County DPW and thinking through how best to coordinate kind of future roadside vegetation management, where to find the best data around county maintained roadways, how to coordinate areas where we want to work with DPW. Maybe they could work within their right of way and we could do a little work outside of their right of way, things like that. So if you want to talk more about that, let me know. And then in terms of the budgeting, yeah, I think one of the things that we can do on our end is really think through what the JPA-wide project proposals will be and what those potential budgets will be so that we have those numbers earlier rather than later and make budgeting a little easier this time around. So that's our goal.
Jim, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Lower my hand. I just wanted to add one clarifying point too, just about the project development process for Marin County Parks. And I think this applies to all land managers. We're here talking about a process for, submitting projects for MWPA funding, but in terms of land managers, this really is a process that applies to all funding sources. So I know a lot of our partners will try to, apply for grants or do other things that are outside of the MWPA process to implement projects that they're interested in seeing done. So it's just a note for everyone that, whether it's MWPA funds or, grant funds, CAL FIRE, whatever it is, that same timeline would apply. It's really about us making sure that we're planning appropriately for the different projects that are coming up and making sure that we can support those as much as they need to be. Thanks.
Seeing no more hands, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the group. Can we check to see if there's anyone from the members of the public that would like to comment?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item, the development of the fiscal year 24-25 work plan in coordination with land management agencies, please raise your hand in the reactions. For those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or unmute yourself while speaking. And there are no hands for comment.
Thank you, Martina. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the committee. Okay, thank you for a good report, Ann. We appreciate it. Moving on to item number B, which is evacuation, ingress, egress tool development update. Do we have a report?
Yes, Ted Briggs is going to provide an update on the tool. I just wanted to, just for context, give a brief introduction. The request for this tool came from many of your agencies around the table following the 2017 fire siege in Sonoma and Napa. The County of Marin hosted a lessons learned committee, and this was one of the requests. It was approved. It went through an RFP process, and the contract was awarded to Sonoma Technology in April of 2022. So it's been a little less than a year and a half. But I think if you take the time to dig through the resources that are provided here, you will understand the complexity and the amount of data and modeling work that went into it. The goal is to make it as helpful to you as possible as you plan and consider your priorities, whether for existing approved project or new projects. And so I'll turn it over to Ted, but I really want to emphasize that, please be in touch with us for any requests, any questions, while I'm thinking about using it for this, let us know. We're here for you. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you. So by now, I think you've all heard a bit and maybe have had a chance to go into the agency side, the agency login and the tool and take a look at it. There are also a number of resources that have been made available to the agencies as well. The purpose of our discussion about this today is to let you know that this tool and the associated data resources are now also available to the public. So in addition to member agencies and associated organizations having access, the public also has access to this. which means that the public may end up turning either to us or to their local agency for questions as they begin to dig into this and understand it more. And likely the questions that the public may have would be in looking at the tool and evaluating layers and taking a look at some of the what if scenarios, might end up asking questions like, so, my neighborhood appears to be in a high risk area or it's in a problem area for emergency evacuation. What does that mean? What should I do? What are you, my local agency, doing about that? So I just wanted to let folks know that that information is out there and available to the public. And because of that, I also wanted to make sure, if you could move to the next slide, please, Martina. Thank you. I wanted to make sure also that you had just a high level awareness of the depth and the richness of information that is available on the website. So I'm not going to go in and model each one of these. I just want to just quickly describe each one of these to you. And you'll note here at the top, there's also a link to the website, which you can either navigate to or through the slides themselves, you can click on the link. So in addition to the map viewer itself, there's also a very broad and rich range of information, starting with just a high-level overview. It's a one-page summary. It's like an entry into the concept of what this thing is all about, its purpose, the lessons learned in the process of developing it, and the benefits of the tool. The next layer of depth about this is something called a story map. It's a highly graphical representation of where the project came from, how it was developed, what it's intended to do, some of the major findings, and some details about the underlying data that was used to do the modeling. Next is the literature review. So before or as a part of developing this assessment tool, there was a very rigorous review of literature around the state of the science of wildfire evacuation. And the learnings from that is what largely informed the scope and the scale and of the tool, and also how the tool was intended to be used. And so I think that's also an important document for people to take a look at if they have if they are looking for deeper understanding of where the tool came from or why the tool does what it does. Additionally, there are some details about an assessment that was done with the tool, and that and as a result of the assessment has identified some priority evacuation risks based on both static information on the landscape, and then also some dynamically modeled inputs for fire behavior, communications, and traffic. And based on those modelings and based on the information that we know that exists on the ground, the non-variable data, there were some, I think there were five studies or five scenarios that were evaluated. And based on those scenarios, there were some results from that. And then you have the actual tool itself, a very rich data set of information regarding fire, roadway, and communication risks. And there are sliding viewers that you can use to take a look at that and evaluate a variety of different scenarios. And the other thing I want to point out here, especially for local agencies, is information about SB 99 and AB 747 compliance. So part of what this tool was focused on was ensuring that users of the tool could satisfy the safety element for both of those requirements in those bills. So there are maps that can be pulled up and used for that purpose. So bottom line is we have a very rich tool based on a lot of science with a great depth of underlying data and complexity. Very powerful. I think it also has a learning curve. So your initial point of contact can be moving forward. I don't pretend to understand the tool to the same depth as Charlotte or others may, given that she's been around with shepherding this through the process for the last year and a half. But part of the role that I have here is to act as that single point of contact. If I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer, or I'll bring the right sources, the right resources to you to get those questions answered. And so keep in mind also, as you're developing ideas here for the next year's work plan, that this tool is this is another tool that you have in your toolbox in terms of identifying and prioritizing tools for the next work year. So any questions for me?
I had a quick question. Just when you said available to the public, has it been rolled out to the public, or is it just if someone stumbles across it, they'll be able to find it?
Yes, so the board of directors approved the release of the map viewer and all the resources to the public at its October meeting. So it is now available to the public on the MWPA website.
I think his question, though, is in addition to it just being available, are we highlighting it? Are we drawing the public's attention to it? I think it's the question, right?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
So we have sent out notifications to Fire Safe Marin, and there's our usual channels of communications, but this is viewed as a rather technical, very, data intense tool, and we have our director's approval not to provide sort of in-depth training, because it's not the training itself is that we can provide is for you as experts and agencies in communicating with the public. So if that makes sense, we're not gonna train the public to use the details of the tool. It's viewed as too complex.
Okay, and I understand that, and I guess maybe not a concern, but just as we move forward, we know the residents of Marin and their engagement and their level of engagement that they have, and that there's definitely going to be folks who are going to pull this up and dive into it and have questions and want to understand whys and hows and whats. And I think, I guess at this point, we would just send them on the TED and say, here you go, because I think we'll obviously not have the.
Well, that's a very good point, and I will say that as you get to know the tool, you'll see that the risk is divided between variable risk, which is defined as things we can mitigate, and fixed risk, which we cannot. So definitely going to be that question of, the fixed risk is high in my area, and the answer is going to be, well, we can't do very much about that because of slope, because of what are other constraints. And then the answer will be, preparedness needs to be heightened in those areas because you need extra time to get out. So yeah, but thank you. It's a good concern.
The other thing to keep in mind with the tool, and Charlotte, you let me know if I've got this wrong, but I view this tool as something that is descriptive. It is not prescriptive. It is a tool that can be used to evaluate and assess and understand. It's not there to tell us or to drive any specific action. Think of it as being like a GIS version of Excel. It's there where you can, input variables and something pops out the other end, and you look at it and go, huh, well, that's interesting. Maybe
Yeah.
that's useful.
You can't input anything, but
Well,
it's a diagnostic tool. It's
Correct,
a diagnostic tool. I will say that it does include all of the currently approved projects, so the public can see what, there's a map representation of all the approved MWPA projects, and we'd be happy to include other projects that your jurisdictions are doing through other funding needs if that's a request. I think that would be completely legitimate to provide the public with a full picture of what are we already doing to address these risks in your neighborhood.
I also want to kind of remind everyone that this is a great tool to pass along to your public works directors and to your city or town planners for their safety elements or for any kind of infrastructure improvements that can help, because that way they can utilize this tool to make their assessments and determination on priorities for projects.
Yes, thank you. And on that note, Chief Martin, the SB 99 and AB 747 GIS layers are actually available as exports, so they can be sent to your jurisdictions for their uses outside of the map viewer that we have online.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions internally here in the room?
Yes.
We'll go ahead and turn it over to our virtual attendees. Belle?
Yeah, this is very timely. I just wanted to mention that ESP is having a forum next week on December 12th on this very subject. And we have Charlotte and her colleague from Sonoma Technologies who are going to discuss how they've prepared this, what they've done. It looks like a really very interesting topic, but there will be public members there, and I value very much what you've been saying about how to frame this. So I'll draw on that, but I think it's of interest to different kinds of people, and I just wanted you all to know about it. And if any of you want to attend, we can provide you an invite to the meeting.
Thank you, Belle. Quinn, you had your hand up.
Yeah, quick question. You kind of made reference, but is this being added to the portal? Like I know last year there were some specific questions about like how does this plan tie into at like the CWPP? Is the equivalent happening with this tool, or is this just a resource to us?
Yes, actually, there will be a new question in the portal. Just have you consulted this tool? And I think as more kind of decision-making tools are developed for the MWPA, I think it's a good reminder to just make sure folks are checking those tools. If you have 100 or 200 miles of evacuation routes covered under a CEQA document, and you have enough budget maybe for the next fiscal year to implement vegetation management on 10 or 20 miles of those, this might be a really great way to help you decide which 10 or 20 miles within your jurisdiction need to be treated first. And then you have some methodology and some science behind your decision making.
Okay, do we have any further questions from our members? Seeing none, Martina, can you see if we have any public comment, please?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item, the evacuation ingress egress tool development update, please raise your hand in the reactions. For those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute yourself when speaking. And there are no hands for comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the committee. And thank you for the report. And Charlotte, thank you for the update. And Ted, we really appreciate it.
I just want to add one thing because I think it's a good segue to the next item. This tool is viewed as a prevention tool, as a tool outside of incident management. What you're going to hear about next is just that, incident management.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Up next is item 7C, which is the renewal of the Genesis EVAC platform, which was formerly known as Zone Haven. This subscription inclusive of a traffic modeling component. Do we have a report?
Yeah, Ruben, I'll start it off, and then I'm going to kick it off and hand it over to Leo and Kim Kimna from Genesis and Ladris. And if there's background noise, I apologize. I was in a nice quiet corner at a conference, and now it's break time at the conference, and people are coming into my corner. So I'll be as quick as I can and pass it off to the Leo and Ken. But it's hard to believe that our 3-year subscription to Zone Haven will expire in February. And so that means we need to work on the new subscription. And as many of you may remember, having traffic modeling as part of Zone Haven as a future option for Zone Haven or Genesis Protect was always part of their plan. And now they are presented that plan in partnership with Ladris AI. And then I think you all probably saw what was going on with the Google study, the news coverage that happened with the Google study in Mill Valley, all the interest that was coming about from it, and from the public, from law enforcement wanting to have that same availability for them, and also DPW and planners. And our evacuation egress risk assessment does a great job of telling us which routes are risky, but it doesn't give us the specific time, and it doesn't give us the ability to really tweak the dials and say, if we are going to evacuate this zone, how long is this going to take? If these roads are open and these roads are closed, how long is it going to take to evacuate? And so that's been a tool that's been missing. Leo and I had an opportunity to present this product to the police chiefs, and Rick Navarro, the police chief from Mill Valley, the recipient of the Google study, called this the Google study on steroids. the law enforcement, or the Police Chiefs Association very much is supportive of this. They're looking forward to using this as a planning, training, and an operational tool. Stephen Torrance from the Office of Emergency Management has previewed the tool, and he sees tremendous benefit for its use within the Office of Emergency Management. And then we do have some prevention and planning purposes that we could use this tool for, but then our member agencies, as far as the fire agencies, you'll be able to use this and have an idea so they can plan their evacuation orders and warnings based on very accurate lifetime modeling that Ladris AI can give us. And so if they know a community, the zones that they're wishing to evacuate are going to take an hour to evacuate, and the fire is going to be there in 2 hours versus 30 minutes, they can start making operational plans for that. And since we do need to renew this contract prior to the implementation and the approval of the work plan, we're coming to the ATC and Ops this month, so you guys can take a look at it, provide us feedback, and then we can move forward from there. And with that, I'll pass it off to Leo and Ken.
Oh, Leo, you were muted.
Oh, my bad. Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much, Mark. I appreciate that. Thank you all for having us here. My name is Leo Zleeman. I'm the CEO of Ladris AI. We also have with us Steve Sickler and Ken Kenma with Genesis. Steve, you want to kick things off, or Ken, you want to give a little overview here? So we see we got you both on the call. So
yeah, I'll go ahead and defer to Steve. I know that he has some stuff he wanted to share today, so I'll go ahead and defer to him.
Yeah, I'll just. Sorry, I'm getting a little feedback here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So we've been a partner with Marin Fire Prevention Authority for almost 3 years now. And what happened with this partnership is I've been working with the team, and Mark identified these kind of requirements quite a while ago, along with members of your police organizations within the county. And about 7 or 8 months ago, we started a partnership discussion with Ladris, and we've become the only authorized reseller of this tremendous technology. And as an authorized reseller, we're able to bundle this with our product. The products are integrated that you can see the real-time status of the zones within the Ladris tool. And as those zone status are changed, that will be reflected in the Ladris tool real time. So we're able to add this tool as part of our contract renewal, and we've also extended a pretty dramatic discount to bring you on board as our first partner integrated display of this technology working together. And I'll kick it off to Leo.
Thank you, Steve. Yep, I second everything Steve just mentioned there. You know, we're thrilled to be able to offer this, and really, I think in continuing forward with the Genesis Protect subscription and you know, formerly Zone Haven, now Protect, this is really taking that next step, and as Mark points out, operationally providing the capabilities to put you know, traffic times and clearance projections to zones. And to areas within the community, both in advance and critically in real time operationally as needed. And that is functionality that is key to on a tactical level to a lot of the engagements you know, that PD or county emergency management may be undergoing. Mr. Torrance and Chief Navarro and the others you know, can attest to that as well. So we're thrilled to be able to bring that functionality to you all in partnership with Genesis. And really look at it as the next step forward in being ready for these events and being able to respond to them with numbers should they occur. Mark, anything you want to add on there?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Excellent.
Okay, are you giving a recommendation for us to take action today, or just provide staff with direction of where to go?
We really wanted to get your sense and feedback from this. Leo, do you happen to have anything real quick that you can show as like a quick demo I don't know if you have it queued up or not.
Sure thing, yeah. Happy to do that. Let me throw this up here for you on the screen. If I can share my screen, let me find that here.
While Leo's pulling that up, it's just like we want to get your feedback. So when we bring it to the operations committee, we'll be looking for a formal motion for the operations committee to pass along to the board to authorize staff to extend the contract and include the traffic AI as part of the contract.
Indeed. Thank you, Mark. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah.
So as discussed, so our company, we provide predictive artificial intelligence models and other predictive models primarily to governments. So we work with counties and cities across the state and the West. And looking at this application in particular, we see here it deployed for a county that also uses the Genesis Protect, formerly Zone Haven system. You have evacuation zones, and what you're able to do with this product is put times to those zones. So you can designate the zones that are evacuating. You can decide not just the order that they evacuate in, but you can try out different strategies for phased evacuations, progressive evacuations. You can shut off roads as needed and figure out, what happens if certain roads are blocked and others aren't. And you can even adjust things like, the seasonal occupancy, if it's the 4th of July, if it's peak season, if we're doing a drill, a training, or a live event, roughly how many people in the region, a whole lot of control over the ability to put hard numbers to evacuation times. And then when the model runs, you're able to get outputs that show you how long it takes and what traffic may look like, again, in advance or as needed in real time. So we see here for this simulation, which ran in a couple seconds, we have evacuation clearance times, 1 hour 45 minutes in this particular scenario, varying by about 32 minutes. We see how many vehicles that is. We see how many addresses were evacuated, and we can play that out over time. So as the community evacuates to safety, we can see how congestion and control points change as the addresses are evacuated and as cars get on the road. This represents the state-of-the-art in evacuation time and clearance modeling. We work with all the major research labs that also do this. And we present it here in a commercialized operational fashion for use by first responders, fire, and ultimately law enforcement to make key tactical decisions around choke points and clearance. And that's a 40,000-foot view on it right there. Mark, would you like me to go any further, or does this cover it for you?
I think that's perfect, Leo. And then as some of you may be thinking, a tool like this is only as good as the data that's behind it. And what's nice about the data that we have in Marin between what's called the demand model that the Transportation Authority of Marin has created, and then all the data that we have created or collected through our evacuation ingress egress risk assessment will be all available to this product to make this tool even more functional and accurate within Marin.
That's exactly correct. One of the great strengths of this and why it's so synergistic with the Protect platform as well is that we're able to leverage all the work that's been done and the data that's been collected over the last 2 years toward this and put it toward modeling applications, again, in advance or in real time. So it's a great point, Mark. Thank you.
Do we have any
comments? I was just going to pass it off to you, Ruben. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Do we have any comments from members of the here in the group?
Yeah, can we just get a better understanding of what we're being asked? Are we being asked to vote on this?
No, we're not voting. What we're doing is asking questions, providing discussion, and then providing feedback to both staff and maybe the ops committee of where we feel this tool would be.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, Mark, did you share any numbers? I'm sorry if I missed that, just in terms of what the contract was, and I assume there's an increase with the updates.
Yeah, so the previous contract was for $73,000 a year after we did the initial build for Zone Haven. Yeah, for the Genesis Protector is an increase, it'll be $81,900, and then to add the Traffic AI was $128,700 per year.
Question, where will this be stored? This information? Worst case scenario. July 4th, everybody's gone. How does this help evacuation on the 4th of July?
It's like all of our situational awareness tools. It's cloud hosted with backups and available through the our first responders, either computers or tablets that they have in their apparatus.
That's right. PD will have access and sheriffs will have access as well. So first response has access to it, just as they do the other operational tools like Protect.
From an emergency perspective, they're all going to be running.
So what it is, it's a layer as part of the Zone Haven evacuation platform that they can utilize, that if we're doing a massive evacuation, they can pull it up, whether it's on your tablet, on your computer, and then in real time look at how long is it going to take me to evacuate Sleepy Hollow, so to speak. And then that can be done from to your and everyone in the field.
Who's going to be in charge of that?
Your incident, so your incident commanders.
Okay. All right. I'm just throwing worst case scenario. You're evacuating Mill Valley, the West Blythedale.
Okay.
Everybody's out.
Okay.
Everyone's out. And the incoming companies, as everyone in this room knows, they're going to be running.
Okay, so typically it's your incident commander, you have someone running an incident, and that incident commander will then look at your Zone Haven platform and then dictate which actions need to be taken. And if it's a large scale evacuation, then you're patch to patch with your law enforcement partners, making those determinations and decisions. So it's just another assessment tool to allow us as emergency managers one extra data point of what it's going to take to evacuate an entire community. Is just another tool for us to use to make those strategic points. Like, for example, if I'm evacuating Christmas Tree Hill, which I know is about 288 homes, and I've got a fire impinging within half an hour, and it's going to take me an hour and a half to completely evacuate everyone to 101, then as an emergency manager, I have to make those tactical decisions of where do I put these people? Do I start putting them into my temporary refuge areas until traffic alleviates? Or do I then work with my law enforcement partner to then try to create traffic flows, i.e. one-way traffic on both lanes, try to get as many people as we can out as fast as we can. So this is just another resource that gives you another data point to make those tactical decisions on the fly. And correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm describing that incorrectly or not.
No, that's completely accurate.
Okay. So it's just
and I think another nuance just to bring up is, as Leo touched on it, in that raging emergency and trying to make good decisions, what you're able to do with this tool is you might initially look and say, hey, I think I'm going to have to evacuate 6 zones. You can run this tool and say, whoa, if I do these 6 zones, it's going to take 6.5 hours. But if I sequence those zones and I run the model really quickly, once again, it's in seconds, where I say, what happens if I ran a fire simulation, which is also included in our software. And the fire simulation says the progression is going to be, this progression over time. Maybe I run a simulation and it says these 3 zones, if I do those zones first and then 2 and then 1, the total evacuation time shrinks to 2.5 hours. And now you can make a better decision and not clog the roads and evacuate them ahead of the disaster, but do in a way that's data aware and data driven. So you're making just a much better decision. And also this tool is used frequently in drills and simulations when you don't have a disaster. So you can really start looking at where you're going to have choke points, where you should dispatch officers. That data can be entered into the now called Genesis evac product. And so when you have that emergency, you also know, I want to dispatch officers here. I want to run it. Oh, I'm having a disaster here or an emergency here. Let's do a contraflow on this road. And I know what that does for evacuation time. So and we kind of glossed over it, but there's a lot of sophistication that improved the tactical response in these emergencies.
And then to add on to that, our EOCs and Office of Emergency Management will be able to see this data live time as well. They'll be able to see where the traffic is flowing, see which shelters have cars going to it, provide additional resources. and then also help coordinate with the traffic control with law enforcement on the back end.
Quinn, you had a question?
Yeah, I think and I can't remember how this got split last year. I think the tool's important. I think it's powerful. I think it's I think like you mentioned, drills and planning, it might have its biggest use. I guess my personal feedback for the ops would be I'd like to see some type of split. I don't know if this is 100% an MWPA cost, especially given its overlays with Zone Haven and Alert Marin, County Office of Emergency Management, et cetera. And I know we're all just concerned, and we had the same discussion last year about everything we do out of the core and coming off the top, and that just gives us less local project money. So maybe the increase is something county OEM or something like that could fund, and we could continue to fund it at kind of what we expected, just to keep our local budgets a little more in control would be my thought. But I think it's a important tool that we need to continue to support and utilize more in our planning and drills.
Bill, you had a question?
Yeah, I think it's important to somehow to get it out, make clear that this tool is really not for homeowners associations or for even Firewise committees to be using it for planning or implementation. I mean, I think who uses it and how they use it somehow needs to be, from the point of view of getting it out to the public, needs to be as clear as possible, because we don't want people who aren't expected to use it to try and then not succeed.
Well, this specific tool is not designed for the public. This is for our emergency managers and our public safety officials. But then we share with the public that we have this access and we have the ability to use it to improve our evacuations.
As long as it's understood, that's what it is great. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Any other comments, questions, or from the group?
Just for staff, in the agenda item, it says review the proposed quotation from Genesis. Maybe that was just a verbal quotation, but I don't see anything in the agenda or packet that reflects the quotation from Genesis.
We'll add it after the fact. Sorry about that, Ruben.
Yeah, no worries. I believe it was 819,000. Well, I mean 81,900 for the original Genesis platform, and then 107 for the added evacuation platform.
126,700.
Okay. Okay. So for those that are looking at complete whole numbers, you're looking at just about 200,000 for the entire platform. I'd like to make some comments. I've talked to both Mark about the program and what it's about. I've had an opportunity to talk to our law enforcement partners at Central Marin, and a tool like this, in my opinion, I think is extremely valuable. Just to understand where those choke points are and how long it's going to take to get a community out. I think we all have theoretical ideas that we throw out there that we make assumptions of, yeah, it's going to take an hour to evacuate the hill when it's actually going to be about 2 or 3 hours. And to be able to have that actual data ahead of time, i.e. in a drill format, even on the fly, if I don't have the ability to access it immediately, at least in my mind, I've got that trigger point of it's going to take 2.5 hours to get out on an average day, not adding panic and, anxiety and everything on top of that. In my opinion, I think there's a lot of value to this tool that has a lot of return on investments, not only for us, but to be able to provide safety for our communities. So, with that, I'd entertain any kind of other comments or questions.
Yeah, I think my one question, the modeling tool is fantastic, and I think it's pretty close to something we imagined may have been part of the evacuation study that we've just completed, but ultimately wasn't included because we just couldn't build that from scratch. That said, this tool looks like something that's used, before an incident to help us understand the way an incident may unfold. Is there any integration for the AI tools when an incident is occurring? Is it, it's not clear to me whether there's a use case while the incident's occurring, because that really changes sort of my feeling about the potential $50,000 a year subscription cost for this.
Indeed, there is. And the potential use case there is that it includes real-time data about traffic patterns. It is actually the only product on the market that does have access to that data for the purpose of evacuation forecasting. So without something like this, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to make those calculations in seconds during an operation. With this, it could be the difference between clearing a choke point and reducing that evacuation from 3 hours to an hour. Or, in some cases more. So operationally, it's used to essentially take in the real-time intelligence that we have about the area as a decision support tool. For pre-planning for drills, you have a little bit more time, but ultimately the same use case, able to basically put numbers to a question that for a very, very long time, it has been extremely expensive to put numbers to. For reference, were you to do a evacuation traffic study for a region, those can run hundreds of thousands of dollars and produce 3 scenarios. This can run millions for a fraction of the cost. So the capabilities, both operationally and for pre-planning, in many ways do kind of drive ROI around those operational response capabilities and the ability to see what's happening as the incident unfolds, ultimately.
One other comment that was made to me that this may be a good tool I know most of Marin is built out. However, with the housing elements that are out there, there's several communities coming in. And typically when a community or a development comes in, they give you a theoretical traffic study, depending on whatever methodology they decided to use. This can actually add, I think, value to our emergency pre-planning to really truly understand what that traffic impact is going to be during an emergency, not your typical trips to and from a grocery store.
Yeah, and I think
you have the ability to model new infrastructure, new housing developments, new roads. And to your point, and I can't see who asked that question, but that's precisely the type of thing that you'd be able to do. Essentially translate pre-planning of new development into tactical incident management and decisions informed by the drills that we've run, but also with the most current information as the event unfolds, and being able to, in seconds, put times to both of those events. Steve, did you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I had a thought on the previous comment, which is maybe to really solidify the picture in your minds. So we do all these pre-planning and drills, and we really start looking at, as you talked about, this hill is taking more to like 2 hours than we originally thought it was an hour, that kind of thing. But now in a live or operational environment, you're using the tool to get the times, and suddenly the report comes in that a tree just fell on so-and-so road. And as Leo showed, you draw a line in a second across that road and now run the model over again and see what that does in a live emergency and make a better decision.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about this being used as a pre-planning tool, if we're pre-planning areas, like if so, for instance, in Southern Marin, they're trying to do a major construction project in the seminary area. If we want to run a traffic, evacuation model, how do we get the information in to do that? Is that an extra charge? Is that an extra, do we do it manually? How does that work?
So all of that's included. We are constantly pulling data about the built environment and the patterns that are occurring there. So for example, and I'll briefly share my screen again here, you can see in this case, road network information, and also address data and residence information, vehicle information being pulled all the time. And as Mark points out, actually a lot of the work that's been done in previous years will get uploaded into the data warehouse. There's an extremely powerful data warehousing layer that rests underneath the surface of this that is tracking those patterns, and that you also have the ability to modify on the fly. And the CS team trains operators to do that very rapidly. So if you are, if you do have construction, if you do want to figure out what happens if roads are contraflowed or the number of lanes is changed from 2 to 3, Whether that's really happening or whether it's a hypothetical scenario, that data gets captured and those scenarios can be modeled quickly and efficiently.
And once again, in an operational environment, that data is being pulled in real time. So if there is just a backhoe digging for a pipe that is going on that week, and it's taking a 4-lane road and shrinking it to 2 lanes, that data is being pulled into the system in a real-time environment. You don't even have to do anything extra. The system knows that there's a slowdown or a bottleneck happening at this section of road in real time.
As we can see,
no one else is doing that.
Yeah.
Can this data be entered in by your incident commander? Does it have to go through your channels? What you said, well, then it gets channeled through you guys. Is the incident commander going to have this tablet and he goes, oh, Oak Springs Road is now closed, and then he can put an X on his map, and then he can think other venues to get out of there?
That's right. The incident commander can actively update that information. And where exact data is not known, there's a variety of means of estimating that as well. So let's say that, for whatever reason, exact data on flow speeds isn't known, but we're getting reports that, there's a blockage. Even if that doesn't show up in the data feeds, they have a way to input that. They can kick down background traffic speeds. They can drop in roadblocks. They can contraflow roads on the fly. They can even, authorize use of hypothetical roads that typically aren't open, and they can open those up and simulate what that looks like on the go using live traffic information down to the minute.
This is Ann. I'd just like to note that Martina just attached the quote to the agenda. So if you have a laptop with you, you can access the quote online.
Just for you guys' knowledge, there's up on the hills, there's not that many alternative, there's not many other ways out. Just for you guys to know, when a road is down, it's down in our hills.
Precisely. In fact, most of our, I would say, the majority of our best customers have only 2 or 3 ways in and out of their community. That makes it all the more important to be able to run simulations like the kind that Steve mentioned, progressive evacuations, phased evacuations with zones where they get evacuated in different orders. Being able to test these things out is what enables us to overcome essentially the limitations of our infrastructure. Can't always build new infrastructure, right? But we can make use of what we do have. And this is the tool for doing that in many places across the state. These are all great questions. Any other questions we can answer on this?
I believe Charlotte, did you have a comment earlier? No. Yeah, so John, just so you're aware, with the one-way roads in and out, that's already put in there based on GIS mapping and ArcGIS and all that. So yeah, so those are hypotheticals that he's thrown out there. They aren't very specific to certain streets within our community. So thank you, Martina. We do have the quote now within the attachment to the agenda packet for those that would like to review it. And so this is a 3-year contract that we're looking for, Mark?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. Comments, questions from the group? Direction to give to staff so we can pass along to the operations committee?
I think we heard the feedback. Unless you guys have anything specific or what was above and beyond, I think we got the feedback we need.
Fred, did you say you had a question?
He was asking if we're making a motion. I said, no, this is
just discussion.
Just discussion.
Yeah. My feedback to the group and to the gentlemen is thank you for providing that information. I think it's a very powerful tool, especially in real time, especially speaking to Mark earlier today and kind of getting the background of what the information was. and also talking to our law enforcement partners. I know it's a tool that they are very excited about. And I think it's a tool that we can possibly share in real time with our public works directors as another tool, not just as emergency planning, but can also be utilized as pre-planning for other projects with your public infrastructure or capital improvement projects that can be utilized to enhance or to try to dictate where we can punch a new road in or an emergency evacuation route out of these one-way in, one-way out communities. It's going to be my recommendation that I'm going to recommend that you go to the ops that at least I'm in support of the program. And I think it's a valuable tool for us. And as an emergency manager, I think there's a lot of value to it.
Okay. And thanks, Leo, Ken, and Stephen. Appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you very
much. At this point, we'll go ahead and open up to see if there's anyone in the public that would like to comment on the report. Okay.
And if there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item, the renewal of the Genesis, formerly Zone Haven subscription, inclusive of a traffic modeling component, please raise your hand in the reactions. For those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand or *6 to unmute yourself. And there are no hands virtually or in the room, sir.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it back to the committee. Once again, thank you for that report. It was very in-depth, and I'm look forward to actually seeing the platform on my tablet and so that we can play with it and start pre-planning. So thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Moving on to item number 8 is committee's report. I was advised that there are no reports from the Citizens Oversight Committee, and then which brings us to item number 9. Are there any members wishing to request any future agenda items?
Is there any interest from the ATC committee for a pilot program where we could hire Marine kids coming back from college for some of the smaller projects? Is there any interest in that? To fund it and get it ramped up?
I think that would have to be submitted as a work plan proposal to see what it would be. And then at that point, we would review it as an ATC committee. But definitely, I think if that's what we're thinking of as a proposal, I think it's something we can bring back to the group. Any other?
Yeah, Ruben, I'm not sure if it exactly the place for this, but in relation to the PG&E, and I see Andrew's with us today, trying to get some sense from them as we were starting to implement work plans throughout the county and, kind of running into ongoing PG&E work, different types of work. If at some point we could get some type of update or schedule or a simple thing, maybe of even what the marks mean on separate trees, because we're engaging with the public. And there's a lot of different programs PG&E has for vegetation management, if it's line, there's different clearance types. And we've been finding in some of our project areas, especially in West Marin, that we don't want to duplicate works where we're coming across a project location along a road corridor, and then we're seeing a tree that's marked with a white X. If that's something PG&E might now be taking out and we don't want to duplicate. So I didn't know if this was the best platform for them to give us a little brief synopsis in the future on what their programs are and how to integrate with them, or if that would be a separate side item.
Yeah, I think if we agendize it for a future meeting, they can come in and do a presentation of what their vegetation management program is and what, most importantly, like what you said, what their markings are. So if you're amenable to that, Andrew, we can put you on the agenda.
Yeah, that works. It'd be really great if, yes, and I'll be checking the agenda when they're sent out, so I'll make sure that I attend that meeting.
Okay, yeah, we'll give you a heads up. So that way you have an idea of when it is, so that way you can be prepared.
Perfect. Thank you.
And just as an FYI, Mark and I have both met with various PG&E staff and management to talk about how to better coordinate in the future. And so I think we'll see a lot better coordination. And Andrew, as an FYI, one of my items on my to-do list is to provide some shape files to you guys so you're aware of where our planned projects are, and we can compare notes. Thanks for attending today.
With that, it takes us to item number 10, which is adjournment. With that, I will go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting today.
I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye. Those opposed? Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time today. And for those that are on virtually, thank you for taking time out of your day for joining us. Thank you.